There are moments in your life that your brain just refuses to let go of. No matter how many years pass, no matter how many people tell you it was probably nothing. You know what you saw. I was 8 years old. It was a warm evening at a tiny little country church, the kind with wooden pews, hand-painted signs, and no running water. The kind of place where the whole community shows up for revival week and the singing goes until well past dark, and somewhere between the hymns and the hallelujahs. My cousin and I walked into something neither of us has ever been able to explain. Let me paint you a picture of where this happened, because the setting matters. This wasn't some national park or deep wilderness trail. This was a small, old church in a rural part of the country. The kind that's been standing since your grandparents' grandparents were young. The congregation was small, tight-knit, and the revival meetings they held every year were a big deal. Families would come from surrounding areas. There'd be music, preaching that went on for hours, potluck food in the fellowship hall, the whole thing. It started in the evening, right around when the sun was beginning to go down, and it didn't end until well into the night. Now here's the thing about this church. It did not have indoor plumbing. I'm talking full-on outhouses out back. A couple of wooden structures sitting at the edge of the property, where the manicured church lawn met the base of a hillside covered in Christmas trees. Christmas trees, a whole farm of them, neatly planted in rows, stretching up the hill behind the church. In the daytime, it was actually beautiful. But as the evening light faded and those trees turned into dark silhouettes against the sky, it was the kind of place an 8-year-old did not want to walk alone. I remember needing to use the bathroom and absolutely dreading the thought of walking out there by myself. The church was lit up, warm and full of people singing. But those outhouses, they were a long walk across an unlit gravel lot, right on the edge of darkness. So I did what any sensible 8-year-old does. I dragged my cousin with me. He wasn't thrilled about it either, trust me, but I wasn't going alone. We slipped out of the pew during a song, told nobody where we were going, like kids do, and made our way across the lot toward the outhouses. The sky wasn't fully dark yet. There was still that last smear of pale blue-gray light on the horizon, just enough to see shapes, just enough to see outlines. We made it to the outhouse, did what we had to do, and were heading back toward the church when my cousin grabbed my arm. He didn't say a word. He just pointed up the hill, and that's when I saw it. Now, I want to be careful here. I was 8. I fully acknowledge that an 8-year-old is not the world's most reliable judge of height or distance. I know that. But what I saw on that hillside was not a normal human being. It was moving slowly between the rows of Christmas trees, walking upright, clearly on 2 legs. But the sheer size of it, even to a kid who had no frame of reference for measuring things, it looked enormous, wide, thick, not like a person who was just big, but bulky in a way that felt wrong. The proportions were off, and it wasn't a black bear. I had seen pictures of black bears. Bears on 2 legs look like bears on 2 legs. Their heads are shaped differently. Their arms hang differently. This thing's silhouette was unmistakably upright, unmistakably tall, long arms, wide shoulders, a shape that your brain just immediately registers as something it doesn't have a file for. The evening light behind the ridge gave us just enough contrast to see it clearly against the sky, dark and solid, moving with a slow, deliberate stride through the Christmas trees. Neither of us said a word. We just froze. And then it stopped. It stopped walking, and it turned toward us. I don't know if it heard us. I don't know if it smelled us. I don't know what made it aware of 2 tiny children standing at the edge of a church parking lot staring up at it. But it knew we were there, and it just looked at us. That is the part of this memory that has never faded. Not even a little. The moment that thing turned its head toward us and went completely still, it didn't run. It didn't make a sound. It didn't charge. It just stood there and stared in our direction. My cousin absolutely lost it. He started freaking out, whispering my name, pulling at my sleeve. I couldn't move. I was completely locked in place, staring up at this thing on the hillside that was staring right back at us. I don't know how long we stood there. It felt like forever. It was probably 30 seconds to a minute. But when you're 8 years old and something that large is looking directly at you from the darkness of a hillside, time does something strange. It stretches, and then, just as slowly and deliberately as it had stopped, it turned back, away from us, back to whatever path it had been walking before we stumbled out of that outhouse. It didn't rush. It didn't disappear into the trees in a panic. It simply resumed walking. Up the hill, into the mountain, until the darkness swallowed it completely and it was gone. My cousin and I ran back to that church so fast. I don't even remember my feet touching the ground. We burst back through those doors breathing hard, faces pale. A few of the adults looked over at us. Someone asked if we were okay. I think one of us said something like, "There's something out back." But nobody really took us seriously. Adults rarely do when children come running in from the dark claiming they saw something impossible. We sat back down in our pew. The singing kept going. And just like that, the revival meeting continued like nothing had happened. I'm not here to tell you definitively what we saw that night. I know what the rational explanations are. A very tall man out for an evening walk, though what man walks alone in the dark between a Christmas tree farm and a mountain during a church revival without noticing two kids 20 feet away, a black bear, though the silhouette was wrong in all the ways that matter. My imagination, amplified by childhood fear, though my cousin saw it too, reacted before I did. And we have talked about that night as adults, and our memories match. What I can tell you is this: that experience has shaped how I think about wild spaces, how I think about what might be out there in the dark, in the places where humans don't usually go after sunset. The mountains behind that little church went on for miles, dense, forested, full of elevation changes and hollows and ridge lines that most people never set foot on. If something large, intelligent, and reclusive wanted to exist in those woods without ever being clearly seen, it absolutely could. Here's what's interesting when you look at the broader picture. The area where this happened sits in a region of the eastern United States that has a long history of Bigfoot-type reports, Sasquatch sightings, large bipedal creatures in forested mountain areas, going back generations. Native oral traditions in many regions have descriptions of large, hair-covered beings that predate any modern Bigfoot legend. The Appalachian and Ozark mountain regions, in particular, consistently generate some of the most credible reported encounters in the entire country. These aren't always people looking for fame or attention. A lot of them are farmers, hunters, loggers, people who spend enormous amounts of time outdoors, who know what deer look like, what bears look like, what large humans look like at distance and failing light. People who report their experiences reluctantly, because they know exactly how they'll be received, and they describe the same thing over and over again across decades. Something large, something upright, something that watches. I was 8 years old in an outhouse lot behind a country church. I had no concept of Bigfoot mythology at that age. I didn't go looking for something extraordinary. Something extraordinary just walked across a hillside. While I happened to be looking, I've never forgotten that moment. I don't think I ever will. There are things in this world that don't fit neatly into our categories. And sometimes the most honest thing a person can say is simply, "I don't know what that was, but I know what I saw. And I know it changed the way I look at dark hillsides for the rest of my life." If you've had an experience like this, something you can't explain, something you saw in the woods or the mountains or the rural dark that has stayed with you, I want to hear about it. Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if you're new here, welcome. We talk about real encounters, unexplained experiences, and the wild mysteries that live at the edges of the world most of us don't pay attention to. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one, because some of the stories coming up on this channel are going to make this one look tame. Until next time, stay curious, stay aware, and maybe don't go to the outhouse alone.